Great. Good morning, everyone. Nice to have you all with us today. My name is Matt Tractenberg. I'm responsible for the investor relations function at Wallbox, and I'm joined today by Jordi Lainz, our CFO. Today's educational session is designed to provide a high-level overview of the company, what we sell, the markets we sell into, the growth drivers that we're benefiting from, and our strategy to become the leading provider of EV charging infrastructure and energy management solutions. While today's session is designed for our retail shareholders in mind, we've taken a handful of questions that we've received at recent events from institutional investors to answer here today for you as well. If you have any questions, you can submit them through the application you're using to view today's event, and we'll try to get as many as time allows. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start our presentation. Okay. Before we jump in, I just want to inform the audience that we're going to be making forward-looking statements. You're probably used to these exciting slides. They're subject to risks and uncertainties. You can find more on those statements in our most recent 20F filing with the SEC. So Jordi, I think that you have 7 or 8 slides that you want to share with our audience today. So why don't we jump right in?
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. And nice to be with you all today. Retail investors are a very important part of our shareholders' base. Our products are often sold directly to the consumer, so it's important that our brand be visible and that retail investors understand the investment thesis. Sometimes the charging space can be confusing: CHAdeMO, CCS, kilowatts, amps, voltage. So our goal is to make the experience as intelligent but as simple as possible for the consumer. Wallbox sells hardware and software to charge electric vehicles at home, at work, or public settings on the go. 70% of charging occurs at home, so that's where we began. Most people drive less than 35 miles a day, and most vehicles sit parked 90% of the time. So the EV is a highly underutilized energy storage asset. Our products are designed to allow drivers to more efficiently charge their vehicles, and in some cases, discharge their EVs back into the grid or run their house off the EV battery. And our chargers are compatible with all marques and models. While we are growing at a very fast pace, Wallbox has already achieved significant scale. Already more than 300,000 units installed in homes and businesses, which allows us to capture an enormous amount of behavioral data that we then use to improve our services. We operate in most geographies around the world and have a manufacturing footprint in each region to service that demand. Those factories can produce more than 1 million units per year, providing a great runway for the coming years. Also, ESG is important to us because our products allow drivers to be more efficient in how they consume and store energy. We have a sustainability report on our IR website, and we've committed to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030. The market is big and growing at a very fast pace. Most drivers now consider an EV as a real option for their next vehicle. EV prices are coming down, technology is vastly improved, and the number of different models is expected to be almost 150 by 2024. We anticipate more than 200 million EVs on the road by 2030, which means a lot of chargers will be needed. To give you context, only 3% of the charge points needed to keep those EVs moving in 2030 are installed today. And we are only at the beginning of a very large long-term secular trend. Sometimes it's helpful to see the products. So on the left of the page is our home and business offering. These are mostly AC chargers, and they represent most of our revenue today. In the bottom left is Quasar, which is a home DC charger that allows you to charge at a faster rate, but also power your home for days of your EV or sell your energy back to the grid. This is available today in Europe and Australia and will be available in the US next year. In the center, you can see software. Each charger comes with my Wallbox, which allows intelligent functionality. Today, it's free to the consumer, but there is a small fee in business applications. Electromaps is a charger management application with more than 150,000 connected public chargers for drivers to locate and pay for charging sessions. The stations on this application do not need to be Wallbox, but we do generate revenue each time someone pays through the service. And Sirius. Sirius is a commercial application that we will bring to market in the near future. Sirius allows buildings to generate and consume green energy much more efficiently. We have deployed it internally and it's in testing phase with customers. And on the right, you see our public charging portfolio. Supernova is available today in Europe and it's from 60 to 150 kilowatts. And Hypernova, it's from 150 to 400 kilowatts and will be available in the US next year. Our go-to-market consists of 3 channels. First, at the bottom, you see through retail and direct-to-consumer, Amazon.com, Best Buy, Walmart.com, but also partners like Uber and IKEA. This channel accounts for approximately 20% of revenue. The second channel consists of contractors, installers, and electrical suppliers. Names like City Electric, Graybar, Ingram Micro, Coil, which is now part of Wallbox. These account for approximately 40% revenue. And finally, large utilities, OEMs, and dealership networks account for the final 40% of sales. We have great partnerships with names like Nissan, Audi, Hyundai, Kia, Iberdrola, and SunPower, for example. A global footprint is extremely hard to achieve and needs a differentiation. The unique requirements and certifications needed to connect to each utility around the world is very complex. For this reason, most competitors sell in one or a handful of countries. But while certifications are local, partnerships are not. Brands like Nissan or Iberdrola want a partner that can grow and expand with them. They can't form a new partnership every time they expand. And to fuel this global demand, we have state-of-the-art factories around the world with enough capacity for the coming years. To give you a sense of results, for the first half of the year, we've sold 115,000 chargers already, which drove almost 68 million euros of revenue or 148% year-over-year growth. Gross margins are very healthy at 41.2% for the 6-month period. And we have more than 126 million euro of cash on hand. So, in closing, we've built a great business with a leading hardware and software portfolio in a large and growing market. We are a young company with intentions of dominating the EV charging market, but we are also solving the very important and complex problem of energy management for homes, business, and on the go. So, Matt, I know you have some questions you received at the institutional investor conferences we attended last week. Should we start?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Sorry about that phone ringing. It's always something, right? All right. So let me stop sharing my screen and we will jump into some questions. Okay. So, Jordi, the first question that we typically get from institutional investors is about the competitive environment, right? How are we differentiated from others? There's lots of names in the space. So can you help our audience understand how we're different?
Well, yeah, of course. First of all, it's that we are a consumer electronics device. It comes from there, not industrial. Also, our focus in energy management, it's not just an EV charging business. It's much more than that. Also, our software is intelligent and provides a unique value. power boost, bidirectional, EcoSmart, scheduling. It's very important also for us, something that it's brand design, quality. We do not white label of our products. And let me finalize with one of the things that I believe is one of the most important. We have a unique manufacturing model. We are vertically integrated. It provides flexibility and allow us to control our destiny, control our supply chain. We are not at the mercy of contract manufacturers. We can innovate faster, we certify and validate in-house, and we navigate then better the supply chain disruptions.
Great. So Jordi, we announced 2 acquisitions last month. Aries, which is a European PCB provider, a printed circuit board provider. And we also announced Coil, which is an installer within the US, North America. Can you tell the audience a little bit about each one of those and why we brought them in-house?
Absolutely. Well, Aries, it's an industrial acquisition that allow us to control better the supply chain for critical components. You know that these days it's something that all companies are suffering, supply chains that makes that they deliver their goods longer as it's expected. We maintain our 72 hours delivery. Then also we control cost and we improve, as I mentioned, our time to market, and we will be able to improve probably our cost and gross margins. Coil, we get up into conversation majorly with them. And what we believe is that customers want a comprehensive solution of hardware, management software, and installations. And installations, it's often many times expensive than the hardware. Then to provide to the final customer a whole solution and also to increase our average customer revenue, we believe it was critical for us. And this is why we did this acquisition in the United States that anticipate also for us this installation program that was launched 2 years ago in Europe.
So staying on the subject of M&A, Jordi, so what's the overall strategy? We're often asked about inorganic opportunities. Is continued M&A on the table? And what would you be interested in bringing in? What are you looking at?
Absolutely, Matt. Yes, we look for well-run companies that will expand our offering or accelerate also our entry in new markets or customer segment. But also, we are careful about how we identify potential opportunities. We want first to cultivate these relationships with them, and we are patient about choosing the right time and price, especially considering actual environment and macroeconomic circumstances.
So we speak a lot about home charging. In the presentation, we focus on home charging, but the public charging space is equally as large. Can you talk a little bit about our product mix today and how it's going to change in the coming years?
Yeah, it will change a lot in the coming years, Matt. Today, most of our revenues comes from AC, home chargers, but Supernova that were released this year, and we have a huge backlog of orders of more than 130 million of backlog, will increase significantly. Given Hypernova and Quasar will be also widely available next year, and all of these 3 products, Quasar, Supernova, and Hypernova, bring a much higher individual selling price. You will see home charging comes down as a percentage of the total mix, and semi-public and public, which all are DC, will increase. Over the long term, we think that 80% approximately of our sales will be balanced between AC and DC, and the remaining amount will come from installation, software, and accessories.
Got it. So the next question is something we've gotten quite frequently in the last few weeks. I'm happy to answer that as well, and it's about U.S. subsidies. So in the U.S., subsidies, including the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act, a program called NEVI, which I'll talk about in a second. And a lot of investors ask about what it means for Wallbox and why it's important to pay attention to it. So there's really 2 programs. One is NEVI, and that program was adopted and passed late last year, early this year. It's $7.5 billion within the U.S., and that those funds have been given to states and the Department of Transportation within those states, and the funds are designed to expand the U.S. public charging network. So all of that money is going to be spent on putting a public charger every 50 miles within the U.S. Highway corridor, which means that you and I taking a long trip, will have the opportunity to stop and charge at a station every 50 miles along major highways. And that money is going to be spent, probably it will start coming into the market mid to late next year, but you'll start to see announcements from hardware vendors about what programs and projects they're participating in. So that's sort of nearer term. And that's important for us because we have Hypernova that's coming to market next year. It will be well positioned in the market, and I think that we're going to benefit from that. The second program that you probably heard a lot about is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is called IRA, and that's hundreds of billions of dollars. There's a few main things that investors should know about that program. The overall goal is to shift production and consumption within the U.S. to renewable sources. Okay, so it's subsidizing investments in electric vehicle factories, in battery factories, in solar installations, hydro, wind, et cetera. There's lots of funding over a very long period of time. So this is a 10-year program, which is really long, and the numbers are enormous. Again, hundreds of billions of dollars. There are specific subsidies for both new and used vehicles, and those subsidies had since expired, but now you get a subsidy to buy a new vehicle, and more importantly, a used vehicle, and there have never been subsidies for used vehicles. So it brings in a portion of the market that perhaps was priced out. The thing that they're trying to solve for is price parity. And so what they don't want, what the US government doesn't want, is for EVs to be more expensive because of the battery charge. They want the price to be equal. And so when you go and evaluate the purchase, they don't want price to be a factor. The second thing is that there are subsidies for public charging installations. So there's $100,000 per installation that covers both hardware and installation. And there's subsidies for home charging installation. That's both hardware and the installation charge. And by the way, we now have an in-house installer after the acquisition of Coil. So I think we're really well positioned all the way around to benefit from both of those subsidy programs. And I think 2023 will be an interesting year to watch. So I'll give it back to you, Jordi. And I know one of the questions that we get quite frequently is about software, because we're historically been perceived as a hardware vendor. But why is software important, and what percentage of our revenue does it represent today?
Well, absolutely. Software, Matt, it's very important, and that's how intelligence is added. If energy is going to be more and more scarce, especially in Europe, consumers need a solution that allows them to control their usage and, of course, save money. But consumers don't want to program everything themselves. They want just to plug it and answer a few questions, and the charger works. And this is what we are doing. And as our solution expands, software will only gain importance in terms of percentage of our revenue.
So you also mentioned bidirectional charging. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is and why it's important?
Absolutely. Well, bidirectional charging has the power to run, it has the power to turn your EV into a valuable energy storage asset. You can charge when energy is cheaper. You can discharge and use this energy when it's more expensive. Because when you bring home an EV, your energy bill doubles. Then it's critical to manage this additional energy consumption. Also, we have a great opportunity that the EV battery can power a home for 4 or 5 days. Then this is a great challenge, and it has an enormous potential to change the way we store and consume energy for the future.
You want to talk about gross margins for a little bit, because we get some questions about that. So we're sort of in that 40% plus range. Can you talk about, is that a reasonable range to expect going forward, and how do you maintain them?
Absolutely, Matt. Maintaining our gross margin, first of all, make us unique, and this is what brings us our path to profitability. Maintaining this 40% or more in our gross margin is that will allow the company following its finance model to achieve on 2024 profitability, because as our sales are increasing significant percentage as it has been historically, our OPEX will not increase in the same percentage. And it will, if we are able to maintain this 40%, it will be a game changer in terms of achieve our profitability in 2024 and our positive cash flow on 2025. This is what we have been reporting in the past. This is what we have reported in the recent quarters earnings call. And we are quite confident that with this in-house manufacturing process, certification and validation, we will be able to achieve this 40% gross margin.
Got it. So maybe we shift to talk about competition for a minute or two, because anytime you have a market as big and fast growing as this, you're going to get a lot of competitors. So what does the market look like, and why do we win?
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of competitors. Market, it's absolutely extremely fragmented. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of local players, but I would expect that the market to consolidate in the coming years. And of course, we'll play a part in that. We think that providing a high quality hardware and software that lets consumers manage their energy consumption in a much smarter way, it's very important. For that reason, our future portfolio will have more pieces of the puzzle. It will be even more comprehensive than is it today. This is also why we invest in R&D. This is why we control our brand very tightly. Our software is unique, and we think that consumers want to be smarter about energy.
So when you think about our product portfolio, our chargers relative to others, is there any technological difference in the hardware?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, because we come from this electronic device and not industrial, we use less cables, but the conception, the design of the product also, it's done to be scalable. We can use one example. For example, we use a material called silicon carbide. This material allows us to shrink down the size of our power modules and achieve greater performance. It is used in quasar, and those same power modules are used in supernova and hypernova, which allows us to control cost and achieve scale.
So I just want to remind our audience, if you have questions, you can use that feature within the webcast application, and we'll be able to get to some of those. We've heard a lot about component shortages from supply chain disruptions, and you mentioned that earlier. So how have we been affected? How have we managed to steer through that?
Well, I believe that we managed through it relatively well, but of course we are not immune. But we have worked hard to build a very resilient and agile operating model. As I mentioned before, we can redesign our hardware to accept a second component if needed, and many times we have used it. And we have established strategic vendor agreements that ensure us the supply chain. And of course, we continue to bring as much manufacturing and assembly in-house as we can. And one proof is the acquisition of Ares. All of this has allowed us to continue to ship product to customers within 72 hours. And it's allowed us to take meaningful market share from competitors who outsource manufacturing and are unable to adjust like we can.
Great. Well, I don't see any questions coming in from our audience, so I think that we're going to wrap it up then. And to our audience, we hope that you found the discussion today useful. If you have any questions, please contact us at investors@wallbox.com. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. The same.